"Ma'am, this is a restricted area." The voice was young, sharp, and utterly devoid of warmth. A Marine captain stood blocking her path. He was tall, with a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite and the crispest uniform Brenda had ever seen. His name tape read Hayes. He held a hand up, palm flat, a gesture of absolute authority. Brenda gave him a polite, apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, Captain. I was just trying to get a little closer to the parade deck. My son is graduating today." "I understand," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't. "But this path is for official personnel only. The family viewing area is back with the grandstands." He gestured vaguely with his chin, his eyes scanning her as if she were a potential security breach. He saw a woman in her 40s, long blonde hair tied back against the humidity, a simple top and jeans. A mom. Nothing more. "Of course," Brenda replied, her voice even. "I'll head back." She turned to leave, but the captain took a step to the side, subtly blocking her again. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your visitor's pass," he stated, his voice hardening slightly. Brenda's smile didn't waver, but a stillness settled over her. She'd felt this before, the quiet, patronizing dismissal, the assumption that she was just a civilian who didn't understand the rules. She reached into her purse, retrieved the folded paper pass and handed it to him. Captain Hayes took it and examined it with unnecessary scrutiny, holding it up to the light as if checking for a watermark. He studied her photo, then looked back at her face, his gaze lingering for a moment too long. "Brenda Lowe," he read aloud, "and you're here for recruit Adam Lowe. He'll be a private by the time the ceremony is over," she said, a hint of pride warming her voice. "Right," the captain clipped, handing the pass back. His expression was one of deep skepticism. "Look, ma'am, we have to be very careful. This is a secure military installation. You can appreciate that." "I can," she agreed, her calmness a stark contrast to his coiled tension. "I was stationed here for a few months, a long time ago. I know the protocol." This seemed to irritate him further. The idea that this woman in her bright blue top had any connection to this sacred ground beyond being a mother was to him preposterous. He saw her as a security risk wrapped in a polite maternal package. "Stationed here? As what? A contractor? A spouse?" "Neither," Brenda said simply. His patience, already thin, snapped. "With all due respect, ma'am, your status doesn't matter. What matters is that you are in an area you are not authorized to be in. I've given you a lawful order to return to the viewing area. If you fail to comply, I will have you escorted by the Provost Marshal's office." The threat hung in the humid air between them. A few families walking nearby slowed their pace, their curiosity piqued by the sight of a rigid officer confronting a calm, unassuming woman. Brenda could feel their eyes on her. The public nature of it was a familiar sting, a small humiliation she had endured in various forms for years. She just wanted to see her son graduate, to not cause a scene, to simply be a proud mother for one day. "Captain," she said, her voice dropping to a low, reasonable tone, "I heard your order. I am complying. There is no need for threats." "It's not a threat, it's a statement of procedure," he countered, puffing his chest out slightly. He was a man who lived by the book, and the book said an unauthorized civilian in a restricted area was a problem to be solved with maximum prejudice. "Frankly, your attitude is concerning. I'm going to need to see some government-issued photo identification. Your driver's license." Brenda sighed internally, a quiet breath of exasperation. This was theater now, a performance of authority for his own benefit. She reached into her purse again and produced her wallet, pulling out her state driver's license. He took it from her, his fingers brushing hers, and began a meticulous comparison. He looked at her face, the license, her face again. He noted her address, her date of birth. It was a power play, a way to make her feel small and out of place. He was treating her like a suspect, not a guest. "Everything in order, Captain?" Brenda asked, her voice still infuriatingly level. "Why were you really down this path, Mrs. Lowe?" he pressed, ignoring her question. "The bathrooms are clearly marked in the other direction. This path leads directly to the student barracks and the regimental command post. It's the last place a family member should be wandering." "I made a mistake. I apologize," she said. "I'm not sure I believe that," Hayes said, his voice low. He was convinced he had uncovered some plot, however minor. Perhaps she was a disgruntled ex-spouse, or a journalist trying to get an unauthorized story. His mind raced with possibilities, each one casting him as the vigilant guardian of his domain. He motioned to a young lance corporal walking by. "Get over here, Marine." The young man, barely older than her son, snapped to attention. "Sir, I want you to stand by. This individual is failing to comply and may need to be escorted to PMO," Hayes announced, his voice loud enough for the gathering onlookers to hear clearly. The humiliation was now a hot flush on Brenda's neck. Her son was on that parade deck about to become a Marine, and here she was being publicly shamed by an officer who couldn't see past her blonde hair and civilian clothes. She felt a flicker of the old anger, the familiar fire that she had learned to bank and control over 2 decades. "Captain, you are making a serious mistake," she said, her voice losing its gentle edge for the first time. It wasn't a threat, but a simple, cold statement of fact. Her shift in tone only solidified his resolve. "The only mistake here, ma'am, was you leaving the grandstands." He took a step toward her. "Now give me your arm. We're going to take a walk." He reached out and placed his hand firmly on her forearm to guide her away. As his fingers closed around her arm, the sleeve of her royal blue top slid up a few inches, and that's when he saw it. On the inside of her wrist, partially obscured by her watch band, was a tattoo. It wasn't the kind of flourish he was used to seeing. It was a stark, professional design in black ink. It depicted a caduceus, the twin snakes of medicine, but instead of a staff, they were coiled tightly around a K-bar, the iconic fighting knife of the Marine Corps. Below the image, in small, precise lettering, were 2 words and a date: Phantom Fury, November 14th, 04. As the captain stared at the ink on her skin, the scene around him seemed to blur. For a split second, the humid Carolina air was replaced by the bone-dry chill of a desert night. The scent of salt marsh vanished, replaced by the acrid smell of dust, cordite, and iron. He heard a phantom echo of shouting, of cracking gunfire, of the desperate, urgent cry that every Marine both fears and prays for. "Corpsman up." It was a ghost of a memory, a story he had only heard in lectures at Quantico, a legend from a battle fought when he was still in high school. The image of a downed Marine, his leg mangled, and a pair of swift, sure hands working in the dark, applying pressure, stopping the bleeding, saving a life. The vision was gone as quickly as it came, leaving him standing on the hot asphalt, his hand still on her arm, his mind reeling. 50 yards away, standing near the edge of the parade deck, Gunnery Sergeant Evans was trying to keep the swelling crowd of families from spilling onto the grass. He was a career Marine, a man whose face was a roadmap of deployments, and whose posture was as rigid as the flagpole. He'd seen everything Paris Island could throw at a man, and everything the world could throw at a Marine. His job today was simple crowd control, but he was always observing, always orienting. He noticed the commotion with Captain Hayes. He knew Hayes, a good officer, but young, zealous, and prone to seeing the world through the narrow lens of a regulation manual. Evans saw him confronting the blonde woman, saw the escalation, the arrival of the lance corporal, the growing cluster of onlookers. It was poor form, whatever the reason. You don't dress down a civilian, a mother, on graduation day. It was a bad look for the Corps. He was about to wander over and subtly de-escalate, maybe pull the captain aside for a quick question, when he saw Hayes grab the woman's arm. He saw her sleeve ride up. Even from 50 yards away, his eyes, trained to spot details from a kilometer out, caught the flash of black ink on her wrist. He squinted, his focus sharpening like a camera lens. He couldn't make out the details, but he saw the shape, the knife, the snakes. A jolt went through him, electric and profound. It couldn't be. He started walking, his pace measured but urgent. He closed the distance, his eyes locked on the tattoo. He got closer, close enough to read the words, Phantom Fury. Gunnery Sergeant Evans stopped dead in his tracks. His blood ran cold. He knew that tattoo. He had only seen it once before, in a faded photograph in a VFW hall, on the arm of a grizzled first sergeant who spoke of it in hushed, reverent tones. It wasn't an official insignia. It was something more sacred. It was a blood pact, a mark of survival and immense gratitude, given only to a handful of Navy corpsmen who had served with a specific Marine unit during the deadliest house-to-house fighting of the Iraq War. It was the mark of a legend. He looked from the tattoo to the woman's calm, steady face, and then to Captain Hayes' expression of arrogant certainty. Evans felt a surge of cold dread. Hayes wasn't just making a mistake, he was committing a sacrilege. Without a moment's hesitation, Evans turned on his heel, pulling his phone from his pocket. He didn't call the provost marshal. He didn't call the officer of the day. He bypassed the entire chain of command and dialed a number he had only used twice in his entire career. The personal cell of the depot sergeant major. The phone was answered on the second ring. "Sergeant Major, this is Gunny Evans down at the parade deck. Sir, I apologize for the direct call, but we have a situation here that requires your immediate attention." "No, sir, not a security threat. It's Captain Hayes. He's got a woman detained down here. A civilian guest." Evans paused, taking a steadying breath. "Sergeant Major, it's Doc Lowe. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Evans could almost hear the gears turning in the old warrior's mind, connecting the name to the legend. "Are you certain, Gunny?" The sergeant major's voice was a low growl. "I am looking at the K-bar caduceus on her wrist right now, Sergeant Major." "It's her," Evans confirmed. "And Captain Hayes is about to put her in cuffs. Keep him there," the sergeant major ordered, his voice now like flint. "Do not let him move her. The colonel is on his way." The line went dead. Gunnery Sergeant Evans slid his phone back into his pocket, his face an unreadable mask, and started walking toward Captain Hayes, a storm on the horizon that only he could see. Inside the Paris Island Command Building, Colonel Thompson was on the phone with the Sergeant Major, who was relaying Gunnery Sergeant Evans's frantic message. The colonel, a man whose default expression was one of stern patience, felt a jolt of disbelief. "Doc Lowe, are you telling me Brenda Lowe is on my depot right now?" he asked, his voice sharp. He motioned to his aide, a sharp young major. "Get me the file for Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class Brenda M. Lowe, Navy Archives, and do it yesterday." The major, recognizing the rare urgency in the colonel's voice, flew to her computer. Within seconds, she was pulling records from a secure server. A service photo appeared on the monitor. A much younger Brenda, her face framed by a Navy cover, her eyes clear and fiercely determined. Then the citations began to load. A Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, a Purple Heart, and then the big one, the Silver Star. The colonel and the sergeant major read the citation on the screen in stunned silence. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy while serving as a hospital corpsman for 3rd Platoon, Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, in connection with combat operations during Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq, on the 14th of November 2004, when a rocket-propelled grenade struck the 2nd floor of their building, collapsing a section of the roof and wounding 6 Marines. Petty Officer Lowe, with complete disregard for her own safety, charged through a hail of enemy machine gun fire into the unstable rubble. For 3 hours she moved from casualty to casualty, shielding them with her own body while applying life-saving treatment. She single-handedly held direct pressure on a severed femoral artery for over an hour, refusing to be relieved until the wounded Marine could be evacuated, an action that directly saved his life. Her extraordinary courage, zealous initiative, and total dedication to duty reflected great credit upon herself and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Beneath the official citation were after-action reports and personal testimonies, quotes from Marines, now sergeants major and lieutenant colonels themselves, calling her the angel of the block. They spoke of her running into gunfire to retrieve medical kits, of her calm voice in the chaos, of her refusal to leave anyone behind. The sergeant major let out a low whistle. "Holy hell, sir. It's really her." Colonel Thompson's face was hard as stone. "She is a guest at my command, about to watch her son graduate, and one of my captains has her detained on the side of the road." He looked at the sergeant major, his eyes blazing. "Get the command vehicle, now, and tell Gunny Evans to hold the line." Back at the path, Captain Hayes had interpreted Brenda's cold statement as a challenge to his authority. He was completely oblivious to the tectonic plates of history shifting beneath his feet. He saw the tattoo, but it meant nothing to him. A bootleg, wannabe piece of art, he thought. More proof that this woman was a problem. "A mistake? Ma'am, the only mistake was mine in thinking you would listen to reason," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. He gestured to the lance corporal. "Go get a set of flex cuffs from the vehicle." To Brenda, he said, "I am officially detaining you for trespassing on a federal installation and failure to obey a lawful order from a commissioned officer. You will be transported to the Provost Marshal's office where we will sort this out. Your son can hear about his mother's arrest after he graduates." It was the final, arrogant overreach. The threat to her son, the public humiliation, the sheer blindness of it all was pushed past the point of no return. Brenda didn't flinch. She simply held his gaze, a profound and ancient disappointment in her eyes. "You really have no idea what you're doing, do you, son?" Just as the words left her mouth, a silent storm arrived. A black, immaculate command vehicle with a colonel's eagle emblazoned on the bumper pulled up to the curb, its tires making no sound. It didn't use sirens or lights. Its presence alone commanded more attention than any alarm. The doors opened in unison. Out stepped Colonel Thompson, the base commander. Beside him was the depot sergeant major, a man whose stern glare could make a statue sweat. Flanking them was the female major from the colonel's office. They moved with a synchronized, predatory grace, their eyes fixed on the scene. They completely ignored Captain Hayes, their focus locked on one person, Brendan Lowe. The growing crowd of onlookers fell silent. The air crackled with a sudden, inexplicable tension. Captain Hayes froze, his hand still on Brenda's arm, his mouth half open, his entire world tilted on its axis. Colonel Thompson walked directly to Brenda, stopping exactly 3 feet in front of her. He looked at Captain Hayes's hand on her arm, and his eyes narrowed with a look of such cold fury that Hayes snatched it back as if he'd been burned. Then the colonel did something that shattered the captain's reality. He snapped his heels together, his back ramrod straight, and rendered the sharpest, most formal salute Hayes had ever witnessed. It was a salute reserved for Medal of Honor recipients, for visiting generals, for legends. "Doc Lowe," the colonel's voice boomed across the silent space, clear and resonant. "It is an absolute honor to have you aboard Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Paris Island, ma'am." A wave of confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Captain Hayes's face went white. He stared, uncomprehending, as the sergeant major and the major also rendered perfect, respectful salutes. The colonel lowered his hand but remained at the position of attention. He turned his head slightly, ensuring his voice would carry to everyone present, especially Captain Hayes. "For those of you who do not know," the colonel began, his voice ringing with pride and authority, "this woman is a Navy Silver Star recipient. She is not just a guest. She is a hero to this institution." He looked directly at Brenda, a deep, genuine respect in his eyes. On November 14, 2004, in the city of Fallujah, then Petty Officer Lowe ran through enemy machine gun and rocket fire to save 6 wounded Marines from the 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. She treated them alone, under fire in a collapsed building for 3 straight hours. The colonel's voice grew stronger, each word a hammer blow to Captain Hayes's ignorance. "The Marines of Kilo Company don't call her Petty Officer Lowe. They call her the Angel of the Block. They credit her with saving the entire platoon. The K-bar and caduceus on her wrist," he said, gesturing toward her tattoo, "is a mark of honor given to her by the Marines she saved. A mark of honor, Captain, that you saw fit to dismiss and disrespect." Across the parade deck, Brenda's son, Adam, standing in formation, saw the commotion. He saw the black vehicle, the colonel and his mother at the center of it all. He watched in stunned confusion as the highest-ranking officer on the base saluted his mom. The stories she had told him, watered down, humble accounts of her time in the Navy, suddenly felt like vast understatements. The crowd was now utterly silent, their faces a mixture of awe and dawning comprehension. They were in the presence of quiet, unassuming greatness. Colonel Thompson finally turned his icy gaze upon Captain Hayes. His voice dropped to a low, lethal growl that was far more terrifying than any shout. "Captain, you will report to my office at 1500 hours. You will bring a pen and a notebook. We are going to have a long discussion about leadership, judgment, and the mortal sin of failing to recognize a giant who is standing right in front of you. You looked at a decorated combat veteran, a hero of the Corps, and you saw an inconvenience. You failed to observe, you failed to orient, you failed to decide. You just acted, on arrogance and assumption." Dismissed. Captain Hayes stood paralyzed, his face a mask of dawning horror and shame. He could only manage a choked, "Aye, aye, sir." Brenda watched him, not with triumph, but with a weary empathy. She stepped forward slightly. "Colonel, with all due respect, sir," she said, her voice calm and clear once more. The captain was attempting to enforce security protocols. "The rules are not the problem." She then looked at Hayes, her gaze not accusing but instructive. "The problem is the assumptions we make before we apply the rules. We are taught to see the uniform, not the person. But sometimes, we need to learn to see the person, even when the uniform has been put away. The title is earned forever." As she spoke, a final vivid image flashed through her mind. It wasn't of the battle, but of the quiet aftermath. She was sitting in a dusty, dimly lit tent, her hands still stained with blood and dirt. A big, burly Marine sergeant, his arm in a sling, sat before her. He held a sterilized K-bar tip dipped in ink. With the steady hand of a surgeon, he was carefully etching the design onto her wrist. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. The quiet intensity of his work, the respectful silence of the other survivors in the tent, said it all. It was their way of saying thank you. It was their way of making her one of them, forever. The graduation ceremony proceeded, but the atmosphere had changed. News of what happened had spread through the crowd and the ranks like wildfire. Brenda Lowe was escorted to the seat of honor on the main reviewing stand by the colonel himself. When Adam's platoon marched by, he caught his mother's eye. The look on his face was one of overwhelming awe, and a new profound understanding of the quiet, humble woman who had raised him. Their reunion after the ceremony was emotional, a hug that contained years of unspoken history. Later that afternoon at the reception, a humbled Captain Hayes approached her. He stood before her, his posture no longer arrogant but deferential. "Ma'am," he began, his voice quiet, "there is no excuse for my behavior. I was arrogant, I was unprofessional, and I was wrong. I am truly deeply sorry." Brenda looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a villain, but a young officer who had learned a hard and necessary lesson. "Apology accepted, Captain," she said. "Let me give you a piece of advice. Before you check a person's ID, or their pass, or the insignia on their collar, look them in the eyes first. You'll learn a lot more that way." In the months that followed, a new training module was quietly introduced for all junior officers at Paris Island. It focused on veteran and family interaction, emphasizing situational awareness and the danger of making assumptions. It was never officially named after the incident, but everyone knew where it came from. It was a small institutional course correction, a seed of wisdom planted on a hot day on a paved path. Brenda Lowe's story reminds us that heroes rarely announce themselves. Their valor is not written in headlines, but in the lives they saved and the quiet respect they earned in the crucible of conflict. To honor all our veterans, and to hear more stories of unassuming courage, like and subscribe to She Chose Valor. Your support helps us keep these vital legacies alive.